Well, it's honestly an honor. I don't know how else to say it. To be here with somebody I've met exactly once in person and maybe a half an hour virtually. But I feel like I know Roger Greene intimately because of his story. Roger doesn't remember meeting me, but I remember meeting him when I first joined the association. It was a conference of ours, and I just want to welcome to the program um, Roger Greene. This is his story about his son, but his son's heroic efforts and Roger's amazing efforts to protect his son and to secure Kyle's future and debilitating injury. Um, Roger, it's great to have you with us. I know we were going to be possibly interrupted by a hurricane down there in Mexico, so I'm glad that didn't occur. Could you just start off, could you take us back to 1998? And in your own words, your own thoughts, when you first learned, you first heard um, that your son had been injured, terribly injured in an accident. Take us back to 1998.
Eric, good morning, and it's good to see you, and a pleasure to be here. And I'm glad we have this opportunity to share Kyle's story. As you and I spoke, I think there's a lot of times people are on the front door looking forward. They have their settlement now, what to do, and I think it's kind of interesting to take a look 20 years back as to how it really did play out. I mean, in real life, how did it play out for Kyle in Kyle's life? And so yeah, it was August 10th, 1998. I was sitting at my desk. My administrative assistant came in and said, Roger, you got to take this call on line 7. And I picked up the phone, and all I could hear was a helicopter, this boop, 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 boop sound. And some lady was yelling at me, your son's been run over by a truck. I mean, all I could say is life goes along sort of normally. And within an instant, everything changes, and your life's different, your child's life's different, your family's life's different. Everything is instantly different, and all of a sudden you're chartering um, a hurricane in life that you didn't plan for, and you really don't know what to do, and it's all new. And so I rushed to the hospital. I was met by a team of doctors, and they described Kyle's injuries to me first. They said they were surprised he was alive. His head had separated by 6 inches, and his spinal cord separated at the base of his brain, C1, C2, C3. They said he laid in the street for 7 minutes without any oxygen, and that was the time it took for life flight to get there. They also told me that his body ripped open and one of his kidneys was still laying in the street. And you're like, yesterday we were playing and everything's great. Today he's in a coma. His head is separated from his body. They said he lacked oxygen for 7 minutes, and that his spinal cord was severed. And they said best case scenario is that he lives, but he'll be paralyzed from his eyes down, and he'll have a significant brain injury. He has a TBI. Not to mention the fact that the truck also ran over his head, which made it even worse. And so, it's almost, I guess the best way I can describe it, Eric, is it's a bit of an out of body experience. Um, it's as though you're watching someone else go through this, and you're there, you're looking down on it, you're going through it, but you're incredibly discombobulated, and it just doesn't feel like you. And I remember that night, and Kyle went through 7 surgeries very quickly, not the least of which was, fusing his head back on his shoulders, if you will. And I was watching the news that night in the trauma center, and I remember the news broadcaster saying, "A young boy clinging to life tonight, ran over by a semi truck. His father's holding a vigil." And, I just remember looking at the TV, Eric, and saying, that poor family, that's horrific.
Oh,
How are they getting through this? And, it actually, quite frankly, didn't even occur to me that was us. And it was Kyle and I and our family.
so your son Kyle has now he's 7 surgeries in the first several days, major surgeries at the trauma center. Um, you've got to be at this point close to your medical insurance cap. That's my understanding. Your son's in trauma. more surgical care, more months, more bills, rehabilitation, and your massive medical bills. First of all, I can imagine back then you're mad, you're frustrated, you're anxious, you're worried, all at the same time. You're a smart, thoughtful, caring man, father. What did you first decide to do with all that pressure on you, not to mention all the threatening healthcare issues facing Kyle? What's your state of mind? What are you thinking of?
Yeah, great question. There are actually, as I recall, those things didn't enter my mind until about maybe 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. And by the way, like most people, I didn't even know what a lifetime cap was. That was a new term for me. I didn't realize that you're going to hit a level of medical expenditures and beyond that, you're accountable for it. I had no idea. And we had friends bringing mail to me, and Kyle blew through our medical cap, I think, in the first 4 or 5 days. I mean, the helicopter ride alone was $27,000, and this was 25 years ago. And so our friends are bringing the mail to me. I never left Kyle's bedside, and I start opening up bills, and the bills are 16,000, 21,000, 61,000, and you're like, what is this? And that's when you realize that you've blown through your lifetime cap, and those medical expenditures are now on you. And so, quite frankly, I didn't know where to go and what to do. And Kyle and his well-being was my primary concern, right? Like, what will become of Kyle? And I know this is a little sad, but I can tell you, I remember thinking too, Eric, that if Kyle did have this traumatic brain injury and he was going to be severely brain damaged, and he was going to be paralyzed from his eyes down. I remember having the horrible thought that maybe it's best that he's not here and that he go. So there's a lot going on. I mean, you're just so emotional. And right at that time, and I think it was sort of the launch pad, if you will, for my thinking about what do we do now in terms of expenses and things of that nature. Because certainly Kyle's my number one priority. I get a phone call from an insurance adjuster from the trucking company that ran over Kyle, and they call me at the hospital. And again, it's right about that time, maybe 2 weeks after the accident, bills are starting to come in, etc. And the person on the other end of the phone said, would really like to meet with you. We're sorry about the accident. They apologized. They wanted to help with the bills, the medical bills. They wanted me to meet with them, sign some documents. They were kind and supportive. Candidly, it didn't add up, right? And so, I just remember thinking that, there's probably a number of avenues to go with regards to Kyle's accident. And that prompted me to reach out to our legal team. And so I've been retired 3 years, but I was in corporate America for 42 years. And I was vice president for the 86th largest company in the world. And I worked very closely with the legal department. So I called a couple of my attorney friends there and said I'd got this phone call from the insurance adjuster and what they were proposing and that sort of thing, and got great legal counsel. They said, hold on, you're going to need some competent legal representation. This is going to go beyond just the medical costs and what they're willing to do. Let's hit the pause button and let us find you some competent legal counsel
So,
there in
Rex, let me
California.
interrupt you really quickly. So when
Yeah, sure.
the insurance adjuster calls, wants to meet and get you to sign some documents. Um, a brain cell clicks in your head and says, "Whoa, this doesn't seem right." But you don't have an attorney working right there in Sacramento. So you reach into your corporate legal structure, which is to me a brilliant move on the part of a father trying to protect his son, because what does that say to me about you? And that means I need help. That's one of the hardest things in the world to do. And your first thought was to reach out for help with a legal team in your company. And now, what did they help you do? And what did you ultimately find to help provide you with that competent legal advice and counseling?
Yeah, great question. I'm just going to
It's
digress
my
for a quick
commercial
second.
message because I love you so much, just so you know. That's all.
I love you too. It actually, that's very kind. It actually isn't that hard to reach out to someone and get assistance or support. I think, one of the important things in life is to realize that they're experts in their field and I'm not that expert. You know, when my car breaks down, I go to a mechanic. When I have a plumbing issue, trust me, I've caused enough water damage in my home trying to fix things myself. I call a plumber. This is a legal matter and I need legal representation. So they did some research, they reached back out, they gave me a name of an individual who was the trial lawyer of the year in the state of California. And while he didn't do PI, personal injury, he had a team of folks in um, his organization that did. And so I called him. We spoke for a little bit. He said he'd call me back in a couple of days. He wanted to do some research, make sure there were no conflicts within his law firm. There weren't any conflicts, and we met. And he put me in touch with a couple of attorneys that specialize in this. And you know, we started this journey, this legal journey.
Well, I remember reading about this, and I may have been through one of our consultants at the time, but I think you went through about 5 years worth of litigation on this case. Am I about right? About 5 years.
Yes, it was just about 5 years. It was a journey.
But I remember something that stood out when I heard about this. You said anyone who's facing serious legal issues, especially in a personal injury case, be completely transparent and tell the truth. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, listen, you've already hired competent legal representation, and you have to believe that the other side, the defense, they're going to do the same thing, right? They're going to have very competent legal representation. So if you're going to represent your child in this, you know, sort of legal equation, you need competent legal representation too. And the thought was always in my mind that if they're that competent, they're going to be looking to attack my credibility. And it becomes less about the accident, less about if I did something wrong in the past or right in the past. It really comes down to my credibility. And so by being transparent and honest, it just saves you from getting to the end game and being exposed that at some point in time you weren't. And that's detrimental to the case. And I've got a really good example that just came to mind. You know, one of the questions that you could be asked, and I was, did you always make sure that Kyle wore a helmet? And I knew there were times that I didn't. I knew there were times he would be on the street and training wheels, and I was right there with him, and he didn't. But as a parent, you want to represent in the best light you can to get the best award you can for your child. So you're likely to say, yes, I always made sure he wore a helmet. The fact is, I didn't. And you got to be truthful and honest, because if you say you did and you didn't, and there's a neighbor now that's going to come testify that they saw the child out there with that helmet on, you didn't do it, your credibility is now damaged and your case is damaged and you just hurt your child. So, you know, be transparent, be honest. You know, it may or may not advantage the case. It's irrelevant. It comes down to credibility. And that's why I said that if you're going through something like this, we did 2 mock jury trials. We closed the street and hired companies to do accident recreation. I mean, we did so much in the 5 years. We went to a dozen mediations, still couldn't settle. And, you know, I just knew that my credibility and being honest and transparent about everything would in the end play benefit and value to Kyle.
So now you've gone through this 5 year, I'll just be honest from my perspective, this nightmare. Meanwhile, Kyle is still going through rehabilitation and care and services. So you're spread very thin, but there's now a settlement. And I'll ask you a question. I don't know the answer to the question. Did friends and neighbors and family members provide you with guidance and thoughts on what you should be doing with those settlement funds?
You know, it's funny. There's an old saying, follow the money. And, you know, once we got the award, we had an inner circle of friends that knew about it. But those friends have friends, and those friends have friends have friends. And before you know it, people are reaching out, giving you counsel and advice and, you know, telling you what to do. And I mean, I had people tell me to invest in gold and silver and start a business and buy a house for Kyle right now. And, you know, there are just all these pieces of advice and well-intended advice. People are not going to give you intentionally, they're not going to give you bad advice. And so, you know, there's advice coming in, um, But as a parent, you're obligated and you're responsible to do the right thing for your child that's sustainable, that's scalable, that will be around when you're not, and continue to pay that child who will become a young man or young woman, continue to pay them long after you're gone. And I think that's sort of what led us to, the structured settlement. And I mean, listen, I was in business, as I said, for a long, long time. I had a very responsible position in corporate America. And, I think it was actually that business savvy and that acumen, um, and that experience that leads you to doing a structured settlement as opposed to leading you in some other way. And even thinking you yourself could manage this money. You can, double the money every 7 years. You can do this. I mean, listen, if you've got acumen, if you have savvy, if you want to do the right thing, you got to be smart enough to know that it's beyond your pay grade, it's outside your skill level. Find something else that provides more assurance, more stability, and longevity for the sake of your child or the beneficiary of this accident or injury.
I know I probably speak for just about every consultant in the industry who's watching this. Um, your son, your family, are very fortunate to have you as the person making these decisions, because I think many times a settlement will go to cash because the father, the mother, the uncle has professional experience, knows how to run a business, can invest the money. So let's take the lump sum and we can manage this to the best of our ability. You chose a different path. You told me once that during the course of the settlement discussions, you had three options that were, if it came right down to it, that you could consider and take advantage of to protect Kyle. Could you walk us through those three options?
Yeah, sure. I mean, certainly, you could set up a trust and manage it yourself. Which again, I just have to go back and say, notwithstanding my experience, um, I knew I didn't have that experience, and I knew that was risky for Kyle, right? We could invest in something other than that, real estate or gold, silver, that kind of thing. Risky. The third option came to us actually through the defense, and if I can, Eric, I remember this so well. It wasn't a consideration, at least initially, until we learned more about it and met some folks that educated us and walked us through it. And it was the defense that said, we'd ask you to consider structuring this settlement for the benefit of Kyle. And they had our attorney introduce me to the structured settlement specialist, who his name was Wayne. And Wayne and I actually, over the years, became very, very good friends. We bonded. Um, and, you're a little bit skeptical because up to this point, the defense has done nothing but, tear you apart in a deposition. They've, I'm just speaking the truth, try to mitigate or minimize the award that, your son or child or, is going to need. You've been in mediations with these folks, and now all of a sudden, you got your settlement and they want to do something good, and it's suspect. It's suspect, right? But one of the things that I think was important, and I'm glad you asked the question because I really do want to make this point. Wayne came over to our attorney's office and sat down in our conference room with us. My attorney introduced him, explained the process, and asked me to give it, some attention and give it ear, if you will. And so Wayne sat down and he started explaining what a structured settlement is. And I sort of peeked in at your earlier conversation as I was waiting to come and join you. He was talking about New York Life. He was talking about American General. He was talking about stability, about long-term income, about tax-free income, about kicking in monies when Kyle would need it, about sustainability and scalability of income for Kyle for the rest of his life, long after I'm gone. And he was introducing me to a structured settlement. So it became part of the consideration in terms of what to do. And Wayne and I had several meetings. We'd meet at Starbucks, we'd have coffee. He kept educating me. At the end of the day, and as I said to you earlier, when you look at all your options, if you want to be a responsible parent and you want to do the right thing, and I, by the way, I'm 20 years into it, so I'm on the other side. I'm not at the front door, right? I'm at 20 years past it. You've got to consider, and in our case, we absolutely structured Kyle's settlement, um, and it's worked out wonderfully for Kyle. I mean, Wayne and I sat down, and he said, when he's 18, if he can go to college, let's kick in some money then. He's 21, he was 22, he wants to buy a house. Let's kick in another lump sum. At 30 or 40, his body, according to the doctors, will deteriorate. He might need, a wheelchair or a van or something of that nature. Let's kick in another lump sum. All the while, he's getting huge chunks of money monthly that are coming in on the 1st and the 15th, routinely, perfectly, flawlessly. And yet we have these big chunks coming in now, too. And I'm going to say this as well. That is that there's enough money that derives from the structured settlement that even that is difficult to manage. Does that make sense? There's enough money that comes in each month and through the lump sums that we've got a large sum right there. I've had to hire a great CPA firm. I've hired a couple of trust attorneys. I've hired Wells Fargo, a few senior VPs at Wells Fargo Bank to help us manage, the money that the annuity is paying. So, at the end of the day, I know I can go on in life and know that whether I'm here or not, Kyle's well taken care of. And that was the goal, take care of Kyle.
So a structured settlement consultant, the first one you meet, and this is Wayne Welsh. Many people in the industry knew of Wayne. He passed away not too long ago. Was the consultant. He comes in from the defense side. Did you ever have the feeling? I think I know the answer. When you first met with Wayne and subsequent meetings at Starbucks, was he trying to sell you anything, or was he trying to answer your questions? You established a bond. How did that bond start, and how did it blossom?
So Wayne has a son, and his name's Brian, and Brian and I remain friends today, even after Wayne's passing. I think Wayne established a relationship with me first, right? Meaning he wanted to get to know me. He wanted to learn more about Kyle from our side, not just the defense side. We talked about family, about life. I would very candidly say Wayne um, developed and then intensified a personal relationship with me. And I'd be surprised if he could do that with every client because he put so much into it. I'm honored and glad he did. And I feel very blessed and fortunate that Wayne took that time with me. I was savvy. I was cynical. I was, not quick. I was methodical. I was going to make the best decision I could for Kyle. I don't think I was an easy customer. Um, but he intensified that rapport and that relationship with me, and he created curiosity within me. And I started asking questions, and he started answering the questions. And I felt very comfortable with him, very comfortable with the process. And at the end of the day, it was structured settlements were here, every other consideration off the table, done.
Well, you and I have had a chance to talk about a couple of things, but one thing you told me a couple of weeks ago is that the parents of a child who's been in a serious accident and sustained serious injuries or is now disabled are under a special obligation to that child. Um, I think I know what you meant about that, but part of the challenge with that is that it's an obligation to take care of your son who may not ever be able to take care of himself. That's a massive challenge for anyone. And you did it. If you had to do it over again, would you have ever? I know this is a softball question. Would you have gone with another approach? Would you have gone with a lump sum? Would you have gone with a trust? Or now, 25 years later, can you say, without any hesitation, the structure was the right path for Kyle, our family, and the results are clear?
Unequivocally.
Home run,
I
out of the
mean, to
park.
use that word in the strongest possible sense, unequivocally, right? I mean, who knows where we would have ended up taking any other avenue? I know where we are today. And, when you're sitting at the front door and you're trying to make that decision, you do want to make the right decision. And, there's a quick story, if I can. There's a Native American Indian in Reno, Nevada. I think he's since passed away. His name was John Esquaga, and he owned the Gold Nugget in Reno. And his slogan in life, maybe you've seen some of the commercials, his slogan in life was leave nothing to chance. Leave nothing to chance. And he said that on every commercial. And that resonated with me. And when it came time for me to be responsible to my son who had sustained this injury, I could leave nothing to chance. And every other avenue that we could have invested that lump sum in was leaving it to chance. A structured settlement is not leaving it to chance. It's a sure thing. It's going to pay income whenever you set it up to. For us, it was every month. It's going to kick in lump sums when you need them. It's tax free. Hello, it's tax free. I mean, we all pay taxes. Kyle doesn't. I mean, there's just, and by the way, the monies that we got in the settlement will be 20 or 30 fold at the end of Kyle's life. So when you start looking at what you got and what it becomes over the 30 or 40 or 50 years of Kyle's life, it far exceeds the actual award. I mean, so I don't want to undermine it. I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone, but it's an absolute no-brainer. And if you're a parent and you're facing something like this, at the very least, give a structured settlement your consideration. And if you want to do the right thing, structure that settlement for your child or your loved one. It's the right thing to do.
Could you tell us all, without choking up, please, how's Kyle doing today? Tell us what's happening in his life going on right now.
Yeah, it is a choke up question, and thank you for asking that. Um, Fortunately for Kyle and all of us, his injuries weren't as severe as they once thought. He does have a traumatic brain injury. He did lose oxygen for 7 minutes, but he's quite functional. He processes. He's slow. He deals with some depression because he's smart enough to know he's not what he would have been prior to the accident. And we have been, fortunately, thanks to the resources through a structured settlement, we've hired the number one doctor in the United States to treat Kyle, so he gets exceptional treatment. They actually did some fantastic work for him with another organization, Shriners Hospitals for Children. They put his cord back together. He actually has mobility. He drives, he walks, he talks. We were able to buy him a service dog, a highly trained, competent service dog, a golden retriever that was $40,000 and easy for Kyle to buy, thanks to the structured settlement. Kyle bonded with the service dog trainer and now works at the service dog ranch, training service dogs because he's the owner of a service dog. So that works out great. He's in physical therapy every week. He goes to a physical therapist, and it's 20 years later. He's still working on getting certain physical things back. He drives. He's frequently on vacation with us. I'm coming to you live from Kabul. He's down here in Kabul with us on occasion. So he's volunteering. He's working. He's in physical therapy. He has great treatment. He's got a wonderful service dog. He's about ready to buy his third home. He was in Northern California. He's got one in Southern California. He's a delightful, kind, loving, caring young man. And everyone who meets Kyle loves Kyle. He's just that young man that you love. And he's just doing great, Eric. I mean, we're so blessed because he's doing well mentally. He's doing well physically. And he's doing very well financially.
The first time I met you, I'm going to age myself here. I watched a YouTube video, and it was a YouTube video of you describing Kyle's accident and your process from dealing with the accident and moving forward with a structured settlement plan. It was very effective and persuasive, I might add. You, in the last 30 minutes, are the best spokesperson I've ever met for promoting the value of a structured settlement for a family member or themselves, people injured in a serious accident. We may need to update our literature brochure and encourage you to come on and help us promote your message even more effectively. And I asked you this the other day, and I know you didn't give me an answer, which means you're a lot smarter than I think you are. I asked Roger if he'd be willing to come to Washington, help meet with some members of Congress, and persuade members of Congress why a structured settlement is so valuable for people dealing with serious physical injuries. I think Roger could do the best job of any of us in explaining that from the potential of a father. So I'm not putting you on the spot, maybe sort of, but at some point, we could use you in Washington, D.C., on Capitol Hill, helping us to make the case that structured settlements really do help injured families and injured kids.
Yeah, I can answer your question, Eric. And the reason why I think you and I connected, last year and started talking about doing this was there is a disturbing thought in my mind. And that thought is that, there are probably numerous parents or responsible parties to some other person who's injured who doesn't make the decision to do a structured settlement. And the money gets lost, it gets used, it gets misused. Um, and they may be well intentioned, um, and they might intend to do the right thing, but it might not work right for them. And that disturbing thought has been in my mind, over the last 20 years. How many cases and situations exist where a person didn't know about a structured settlement, or they knew it, but they didn't have the confidence to do it? Um, and I think that's what prompted, us to connect is we need to make sure that everyone knows about a structured settlement. Everyone is given the opportunity to look at it. Um, I mean, people can be well intentioned and they can be misintentioned and do the wrong thing. So I think getting the word out so that people know there's this option, and and embracing it and doing it is the right thing to do. How many cases have there been in the last 20 years since we structured Kyle's settlement and today where people could have done this and be sitting comfortably and responsibly and know that their loved one is very well taken care of, and they chose a different avenue? And that's wrong. It's sad to think about that. So anything I can do, listen, I'm retired, I have time, I want to give back. Anything I can do to help people make the right decision in that circumstance, you can count on me, and I do want to do it.
You said it, and we heard it in a previous session. Peter Joachim from Ringler made a comment that there might be 200, 300, 400 billion dollars in personal physical injury settlements every year. $8 billion will go into a structure. Now, should all of that money be structured? That's not the point. The point is your point, that there are way too many families who don't know that the option exists, don't know or appreciate the value proposition of guaranteed income. They are super confident in their own abilities. And to answer your question, how many people, I don't know, but Debbie Sink and I, in our office, 10 calls a week from people who have settled their case for a lump sum, and the money is gone, and they're calling to find out if they can do it over. It's the
It's too
saddest phone
late.
call we get. It's horrible.
It's too late. Eric, you brought up a really good point. I want to digress for a moment and just reiterate it. And, it's a word that's good and it's a word that's bad. And the word is pride. And I think, in my situation or situations like it, when someone gets a lump sum, there's a degree of pride that kicks in, and you got the I can do it. um, and I think it takes more wisdom, more character, more strength, more substance to be able to say I can't do it. But there is an organization, there is a process that can do it, and it's way better than anything else out there. And you almost have to set that pride aside and recognize your limitations and your ability, use your intelligence, and make the right decision for your loved one, and structure that settlement. It's the right thing to do.
You said something earlier, and it's again the consultants in the industry who are part of our organization will appreciate this far more than I can, because I'm not a structured settlement consultant. But you described a process of finding a personal injury attorney, a very good one, but that personal injury attorney helping you get to a settlement, and then suggesting that you should talk to a structured settlement consultant. And a structured settlement consultant from the defense side comes in and meets with you. So far, what I've heard from you is a caring, thoughtful, prideful father who wants to protect the best interests of his son, but reaches out to an attorney, gets his case settled after 5 years of litigation, comes to the point of now what do I do with the settlement dollars, and a structured settlement consultant comes into the picture. So father, attorney, consultant all came to what I guess you described, I certainly believe, was the right decision for Kyle. What I'm saying to you is, and all our consultants, the role the consultants play is huge. Building a relationship with claimants, fathers like a Roger Greene, explaining what a settlement is, working with defense counsel, working with plaintiff counsel, ultimately for the betterment of and the security of someone like a Kyle Greene. I thought that was a fabulous way to describe exactly what these people do every single day.
Eric, can I add one more thing too? And it sort of goes, I shared this with you and Debbie a few weeks ago. It sort of goes to my philosophy, I think, on life. And, it basically, it's this. There are three people in your life at any given time. And by the way, you're chartering a terrain, with this issue that you're facing, this accident or whatever it is, and you don't know where to go or what to do. I mean, you're moving through this equation without prior experience. Families don't have experience on how to handle, the accident, the legal issue, the structured settlement. You don't know, right? And so here's where my philosophy kicks in. There are three people in your life at any given time. There's somebody in front of you. They've already experienced it. They've gone through it. They know what to do. Find them. Let them impart knowledge. Let them guide you. Let them share the experience with you. Let them educate you. Fortunately for me, it was Wayne Welsh. Wayne had been through this 100 times, and he knew exactly how to guide me. He was the person in front of me, right? It was the consultant himself was the gentleman in front of me. The second person in your life is that person that's going through it with you. For me, in this equation, the person going through it with me was a principal of a school in Arizona. His son flipped his BMX bike, broke his neck. Him and Kyle were in the same room together.
We just lost the
And
audio.
Bert, oh, you did?
You got it now.
Okay. The second person is the person that is going through it with you. For me, it was a principal from a school in Arizona, and his son flipped his BMX bike, broke his neck, and Kyle and Chad were roommates. Bernie and I were roommates at the hospital together. So we had that camaraderie, that sharing. So I had the person in front of me, the person with me. The third person is the person that's yet to go through the experience that you've gone through. And that gives you the opportunity to impart knowledge, to share, to understand, to guide, to support. And if you can identify those three people in whatever equation you're going through, a death of a loved one, a divorce, a new job, an accident like Kyle's, if you can identify those three people, who's in front of you, because they're going to help you, who's going through it with you, because that's where the camaraderie, the understanding, and all that comes from, and who can you help? Who's behind you? Who can you now impart that knowledge to, guide, and support? And I was fortunate, because I had the person in front of me, it was Wayne Welsh. I had the person with me, it was Bernie, the principal in Arizona. And the people behind me is anyone that I can help that will see this and heed the advice and counsel for their loved one and do the right thing.
Well, I know many of our agency leaders are watching this, and I hope you appreciate, like I am, because I'm trying to hold it together here, Roger, that I'm just listening to one of the most impactful and passionate motivational speeches that I've heard working with this industry in a long, long time. You have to reach out to Roger directly. I think he'd be great on some of your program agendas. We are going to work with Roger, his family, on a future educational video. I promise you that. You once said to me, and I'm going to read it because I want to make sure, because I'm a lobbyist, so sometimes I fudge things to a little bit. You once said that a structured settlement is safe, prudent, and the most critical plan if one wants to protect their legal award and resources. What did you mean by that? when because it did you learn that from Wayne? Have you learned that after 25 years? How is it in your mind safe, prudent, and the most critical plan you can establish for a loved one?
Well, I mean, listen, it's both of those, right? I mean, it was taught to me by Wayne. He's the one that educated me and showed me. Um, After being done with Wayne, it was easy to eliminate all the other options because it's a sure thing. It's all but a guarantee. You know, your money's not going away; it's there, and in fact, you're going to get it back tenfold over the lifetime. And in this case, Kyle, right? Um, the fact is that, and I guess the second thing is, I'm on the other side of it now. We are 20 years into it. You know, we settled on March 2nd, 2002. We structured the settlement, I don't know, 6, 8 months after that. And having lived it and being now 20 years past it, I can tell you that every single month, Kyle gets his 2 checks from New York Life and his 1 check from American General. Every 4 or 5 years, Kyle gets his lump sum. I have a document that shows me when Kyle will get his payments each month, each year until he turns 100, right? I mean, I see this document. I see who the payments are coming from. They have my bank account. It's direct deposit. No money exchanges hands. And when we go to use the money, which is all protected in a special needs trust for Kyle, the money is there for Kyle to use. So, you know, I guess I just have to say, would that be the case if we chose another avenue? And, you know, I can't say it would be. As a matter of fact, it probably wouldn't be, right? Um, it just, there's no question in my mind that a structured settlement pays the revenue it says it's going to pay. It pays over the long haul. There's no risk. It's tax free, and you're taking care of your loved one and doing the right thing. There's no other option for me. Sorry, there'd be no other option. None at all.
Well, Roger, this time with you has gone by way, way too quickly. I know when we met virtually a little bit ago, Debbie and I were so totally impressed that you were calling from Cabo, which is lovely. Hopefully, this hurricane that came through missed you completely. Has it gone through and has it missed you completely?
Yeah, we got a little wind and a little rain, but you know, the next day we picked up a palm tree here or there, and we're back to our lovely view of the beach, and you know, everything's fine. We're just fine, just fine. It's all good.
Well, it's been a great story. I'm glad you had a chance to tell it to us. I think it's fabulous to know that Kyle is not only living today, he's thriving today. I don't know too many young men who own 3 homes and volunteer at a rescue dog center, which I think is a fabulous story, by the way. Um, we have a couple of questions. I'm getting one in my ear. The first thing that hits your mind when you're talking to somebody about settlement funds is you can manage it. The second thing you might hear is, did you believe it when you were told tax free? Did you believe it when you were told guaranteed? Those are two pretty powerful terms to be used describing a settlement. Did you at first believe it, or did you have to be persuaded?
No, absolutely not. I mean, listen, as I said, and I've said it a couple of times, you know, after 42 years working, you know, in corporate America for a very large organization, you're told a lot of things, and candidly, some aren't true. And there are a lot of salesmen out there and selling a lot of things, and you know, they put twists and turns on things to make the sale. And you know, I'm aware of that. I'm shrewd. I'm calculated. I'm careful. Um, you know, I use due diligence in everything I do. I'm not quick. I'm slow. I process, um, and typically make good decisions, and that fueled my career. Um, and when people tell you those things, you know, if something's too good to be true, it is too good to be true, right? I mean, if it says that, it probably is too good to be true. This is not too good to be true. It is accurate. And, you know, as I journeyed with Wayne over the weeks that we spoke, the other options just dribbled away um, because it involved risk. And, you know, you can't have risk when you're talking about a injured child that needs those monies for the rest of his life. So, yeah, I mean, I was skeptical. I can't believe anything's tax free. Give me a break. I live in California. They charge you for everything out here. I'm paying more taxes than I care to admit. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it's assured income. And by the way, I saw the total dollar amount at the end. I think it took us all the way to Kyle's life at 78 or 80 or 85 or something. And it was an insurmountable amount of money that was guaranteed. Um, so, yeah, I was very skeptical. It didn't seem probable, it didn't seem likely. Um, but again, we're 20 years into it. It is not probable, it's not likely, it is factual. It actually is true.
Perfect. Roger Greene, it's so great to have you here. Um, we all talk
Thank you,
about
sir.
meeting with and admiring heroes that we read about or watch in the movies or and television shows. You are a real life, honest to goodness hero. The work you did for your son, for his life, for your family, and you continue to do. You're an amazing inspiration. It's great to call you a friend. I want to thank you very much for being on our program agenda. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Eric. Same here. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
Perfect. We're going to go
Bye
to
now.
one of our sponsor messages, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you very much.